Hello, and welcome to ThursdAI 27th, our last show of the summer for sure. This is Alex Volkov, your AI Evangelist, with myself from CoreWeave, your host for ThursdAI. I'm joined by Peter Gostev, Model Capability Lead at Arena.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you everybody else who joins the live show, for the last one for the summer. We're very excited to bring you a bunch of news, including breaking news, I think from yesterday night and from today. Peter, I think we need to hit that button. This is a big one for sure. Breaking news. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. You guys know we love breaking news here on the show, and I think given the fact that literally every ThursdAI newsletter that I ever sent all included a link to a Hugging Face page of some sort, I think this could be one of the more breaking news that we could host on the show, folks. NVIDIA announces acquisition of Hugging Face for nearly $13 billion. NVIDIA acquires Hugging Face for $12.9 billion, as reported on the information, 3x the valuation in 2023. After trying to acquire them for $7 billion, somewhere in between there, NVIDIA is now joining Hugging Face. I wanted to make a joke. Welcome, Wolfram, to the show. I wanted to make a joke that there's another announcement from NVIDIA. They just announced like this little cute robo-duck thing, mini robo-duck. I don't know, Peter, if you had the chance to see it, which is the same folks that Hugging Face acquired themselves. But Poland Robotics, the folks who brought you this little guy, Richie Mini. Come on, wake up, buddy. Yeah. As Wolfram has one, I have one. We told you about this. They together released another robot, and folks are joking on the timeline that this is now, the second biggest news. But we must absolutely talk about this insanity, folks. What do we think? Good for open source? Bad for open source? Peter, why don't you go first, and then Wolfram?
You forget that Hugging Face is like a normal company that has to make money and could be acquired. Just because they've been around for so long, they've been the foundation of the whole community. So it's kind of, you imagine it's like, oh, well, it's like, I don't know, it's like your library getting acquired or something. It's like, oh, yeah, I didn't realize that could actually happen. But no, they're a real company that need to have a business model. And I think they did grow their revenue, right? So they were
100 million ARR in 2026, which is very, very impressive.
I think it was didn't go to 150.
50, I think that's what's the stat show. And I think you're right. We're like, for many of us who joined the AI wave, the transformer wave, like early on before ChatGPT, but later than machine learning, Hugging Face was like a thing we had to learn about. Like I remember discovering Hugging Face when Stable Diffusion model was being downloaded from there. Hugging Face was already a big thing in ML and AI. And another thing I'll say before I go to Wolfram is that there has been a lot of kind of like outcry publicly about GitHub and how fast GitHub is growing, how difficult for GitHub is to stay up because all these AI agents are putting all these commits, and GitHub is under tremendous load. We talked about this. More than 14x the time of commits from last year goes to GitHub, so GitHub is under stress. I don't remember Hugging Face going down, and they're giving like downloads of billion of gigabytes, like trillion parameter models getting downloaded all the time. Hugging Face is always up. Hugging Face is also, by the way, a Git repository, by the way, like if folks need an alternative. Wolfram, what do you have to say about this?
I do remember when Hugging Face was down and I wanted to download some models. That happened, and the thing is, I think an influx of cash is a great thing. And if you think about which company could acquire Hugging Face, I don't think there's a better match than this, because NVIDIA, with their open source initiative and the positioning they have, it just makes sense. I think it's a good fit. And I think that will be beneficial for both companies.
There is, I think, around 13 million Hugging Face accounts. I think, first of all, congrats on everybody. We had a bunch of Hugging Face friends on the show, and we talked about Hugging Face obviously all the time. Congrats, huge congratulations to the three co-founders. Let me see, Clem, Julien, and Tom Wolf, right? Clem, Julien, the CTO, and Tom Wolf. I think two of them had been friends of the show, and everybody else from Hugging Face that we've like hosted on here. I really personally am happy about this because NVIDIA is pushing open source. NVIDIA is gonna now make sure that there's place for open source to exist. Obviously, it's not cheap to host all of this. Obviously, some people have some issues, but there's gonna be always a person who's like, hey, goes to ChatGPT. What is the best devil's advocate for this thing, and post it just for laughs. But hey, we're excited about this. I do want to show the little robot thingy before we kind of continue because I think that's cool. Wolfram, you sent it to me, so let me pull this up. I don't know if this was a very conscious decision on the part of like Hugging Face folks, but Hugging Face, after acquiring Poland Robotics, announced this little cute thing, which I think is just lovely. This is, here's this big brother Richie, and this thing gets up on its own. If you guys remember one of those NVIDIA GTC conferences, Jensen had a bunch of robots on stage, and they kind of had a similar one from Disney that costs, I don't know how much money, that kind of looks like a Star Wars robot that also walks like wobbly on two legs, etc. This is the $500 version of this that also has skates, which is really funny, and has a camera, and you can buy for $500, $400. It's very impressive.
$399.
$399.
I already pre-ordered one because
Of
I
course
mean
you
I
did.
have 2 Richis, and now I want this as well and see
Yeah.
where it goes. Literally.
And this is a kit that you also build, I'm assuming. So effectively, you'd be buying NVIDIA hardware by Christmas when this arrives.
Clearly, Jensen wanted to get ahead of the news. So
Yeah,
he
the news. All right, folks. So, yeah, this is the big news that we are very excited about. The information dropped it. Anything else we should say? No, just that Hugging Face is hosting hundreds of thousands of models at this point and does inference as well and integrates with inference providers. So shout out to Hugging Face. But this has not been a chill week. We called last week chill week. This week, there's quite a few things that we should run through. Why don't I first announce the guest that will join us on the show, and then we'll talk about individual kind of highlights about this week, and then we go to the TLDR. So later on the show, folks, don't miss, later on the show, we have 2 guests. The data center debate has escaped velocity. We told you about water usage, myths, etc. before, but recently on timelines and on local politics, the data center hate debate has reached escape velocity. Most folks are talking about this. Senators in different states are announcing moratoriums or announcing anti-data center stuff. Polls are getting released about people preferring nuclear and coal plants to data centers in their backyard. So there is some sort of a hysteria happening. And we have one of the top people who talks about this, Andy Masley, who's a writer and a journalist. Time magazine announced him as top 100 people in AI. Andy is going to join us later today that's going to be 10 a.m. Pacific to talk about the data center debate and the data center hysteria and the water use myths, etc. It's going to be a very exciting conversation for sure. And then we have our friend of the show, Kwindla Kramer from Daily and Pipette, with some exciting news of their own. Let's just say that. So definitely that's going to be at 10:15 a.m. Pacific. They're going to join us. So in about an hour or so. So we have around an hour to talk about the news, and then we have 2 exciting guests and probably more breaking news. With that said, Wolfram and Peter, let's talk about the one thing that stood out to you in the landscape of news from the last week. I'll start with Peter.
I was thinking what to focus on. And I know in the last episode, we kind of touched on Qwen27b, 3.27b. And I think at that point, I haven't really tested it properly. I mean, I sort of ran a few prompts and so on. But then I did a video on it, and we have some scores come out and so on. And I think it's still underrated how good this model is and how important I think it could be. Because before this model, I don't remember a single model of that class that I would been that impressed by. It's not that they're not usable, but they're not particularly reliable. But this one, I was running it, I can't remember how long for, maybe it's like an hour or more on our agent arena. And then I think it generated some like 400,000 tokens, and it created stuff like honestly for some things, not for everything, but kind of close to frontier level, like it felt like. To be clear, it's all kind of one-shot stuff and that kind of level. So it doesn't mean it's going to replace Fable or something like that. Like that's definitely not true. But it's the first model of that size where I'm like, oh my god, like what's happened there? And I tried to look up. I don't think they disclosed like what they actually did. So in terms of like, did they put a lot more data, a lot more compute? It's not super clear. It's worth coming back to it if you kind of skipped it and just trying it again. And you can absolutely run it on your laptop. Context window is a bit of a limitation. Like you can't have, like they advertise up to 1 million. Obviously, if you just have a laptop, you can't do 1 million on your laptop. But it certainly, I'm very impressed. It's worth coming back. I'm slightly confused by the price. If you look at the Open Router, the price is like a little too high. So hopefully that will come down. But that, if you have no use for that model, I think it's still worth kind of reassessing your understanding of the field, because I certainly need to reassess. I didn't think the 27B models would be that good. So that's very good work by them.
That is a big update from you at the Open Router as well. I know that this model is like flying off Hugging Face. Like folks are very excited. This is very in the sweet spot of what you can actually run. So locally, this is I think the top intelligence model you can run locally right now, and it runs like fairly quick as well. It's very interesting who hosts this. Let's take a look. This is the Qwen4 and oh look, there's CoreWeave. Shout out to CoreWeave.
Expensive. Come on, give us a discount.
But yeah, 40 cents per million tokens and then 3 per output. It looks like we're matching a little bit cheaper, maybe a little bit more expensive than some other folks. But yeah, you're right that this is compared to this 27 model. It's very interesting pricing and this intelligence level. Okay, so this has been the news of last week. Peter, anything from this week?
I think acquisitions, very big deal. I think it really, I mean, Open Router was, I guess, last week.
Open Router just a week. Yeah. Sorry, but the Hugging Face news just a week after Stripe acquired Open Router for $7 billion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we did cover that, right? So yeah, I think that I guess now I'm trying to. I think we don't have like huge new models. I mean, we do have here and there, but I think that's kind of an interesting trend. I think NVIDIA is clearly making a lot of moves in this space, like and it's kind of puts it in perspective with what we saw in terms of chip developments from Jalapeno, right, OpenAI, and also seems like the chip industry in China is doing well. I mean, I don't really understand the details, but seems to be, we had the big release from GLM with their Flash model, and they were like,
with OX Alpha. We have to talk about this. Yeah, this is our next topic. OX Alpha revealed and it turned to be the GLM-5.3-Flash.
And maybe kind of a meta point on this is that there seems to be this kind of it seems to be some shifts in the industry. It's hard to, I think it's not clear enough what is going on exactly. To me, it sounds like the models have really leveled up across the board. And to me, that's normally kind of a hardware story. So there's probably more availability of hardware. And that could be connected to what NVIDIA is doing. NVIDIA is very fast. So Jensen, I think, makes a decision and things happen.
Yeah.
So I think they are trying to change not change direction as such, but I think double down on open source, double down on that kind of development.
Yeah.
So I think there are kind of interesting structural things happening. We'll need more time to just see what's going on. But I think these dynamics beyond the specific releases, I think maybe not exactly this week, but that's like 2 or 3 weeks, I think, accumulated in the kind of picture that takes shape.
Yep. Wolfram, how about you? What is your one big highlight from this week? Well,
first, I want to mention Qwen as well, because I've been benchmarking it and I will release the results soon. I'm still doing different thinking level stuff, but it is really solid at home right now. And yeah, I'm super excited about this. I have heard a lot of good things about people actually using it in production for their various things. So it's not just the benchmark. This model seems to really be the best you can run locally. Fully agree with Peter there. From my personal perspective, I also am super excited about the new Apple hardware that they announced, the new M5 Ultra. And I think this will become ever more important. I mean, these machines are super expensive if you look at the full price. But if you think about if you finance it and pay it off over 2 years or something like that, it is about the same price as a pro subscription with OpenAI or Grok. And then you can use as many tokens as you want. So I think this becomes quite interesting over time, especially if you run AI for your whole family that way.
So the two new Macs that Apple announced was the Mac Studio with M5 Max and M5 Ultra, with a very deceptive pricing saying, oh, it starts for $24.99, so like $2,500. Once you start configuring this to anything useful, this machine goes, I think, up to like $22,000, which is absolutely insane. But for local AI geeks, like very, very strong folks who are dedicated to run local AI inference, this is a viable alternative to some like RTX machines and different like GPU cards, because this is like a full machine. This is comparable to RTX 6000, I think, that you can try to get to your local setup, but this is a full machine. And then they announced also a new Mac Mini, which you also can get with heightened specs. So those are the two machines, Wolfram, that you mentioned, right?
Yeah, and I think of it like a central heating. When you buy a huge central heating unit, it's very expensive, but it powers the whole house and you get some kind of independence. Yeah. So in the future, when AI becomes so important that everybody is using it all the time, you either have a subscription for everyone and you're totally dependent on internet connection and so on, or families will put this in their basement and run their internal AI processing. I see a future like that.
I didn't even max out. This is a $3,000 Mac Mini. Lovely. But yeah, kudos to Apple. By the way, Apple's next week are going to have, or I think in 2 weeks, they're going to have their announcement. We'll see how much AI is there. We're going to cover it. Nisten, thank you, Wolfram. Nisten, welcome to the show. Highlight from you. Somebody say OX Alpha, damn it.
I was going to say OX Alpha. I also had Lyndon. He ran from GitHub GG. He ran through almost 500 million tokens of that, just making summaries of code repositories.
So for folks who have no idea what we're talking about, Nisten, can you give us a little brief thing about OX Alpha?
Yeah, so everyone was wondering which model this free model was, because they had very generous limits. Actually, they had no limits at all on Open Router. And everybody was running this and saying it's very good and so on. And we were wondering, and in this rare occasion, even I was wrong at being able to tell which model it was. And I thought, yeah, it would be Grok, because who else would just give you completely unlimited compute? Yeah. You could stagger your requests by 1.5 seconds, and then you could just indefinitely keep sending requests. And that's how people ranked up hundreds of millions of tokens. And yeah, it turns out it's GLM-5.3, and surprisingly, very not censored. I tested stuff. I asked it a whole bunch of political questions, which I would expect some models, like Chinese models and stuff, to not respond. It responded to everything very factually and extremely good agentically. It ran pretty fast, better than Opus 5 medical performance, because I made a whole data set on it. And then I had Fable do constant stuff with Opus 5 and Opus 4.8, which I'd done data sets of before. And it found it to be better at that. Qwen is still better. Even Qwen27B is better at telling images. But on the agentic side, yeah, this is great. Those Mac Studios are going to sell out.
So folks got excited about this OX Alpha thing, specifically, I think, because of the generous tiers that were announced. OpenCode came out on Twitter and said, hey, we have 100 trillion tokens capacity per day. Newswitches followed up and said, we have a quadrillion tokens per day to offer via this thing. And at some point, this became like a joke. Okay, we have 100 quadrillion. Quadrillion is a lot. Like, just to put this in perspective, all of Open Router usage, I think, for the past month was 220 trillion tokens.
It never went above 10 trillion per day, because people try to measure and estimate it. But
I think the last that we saw was, I think, full days was 23 trillion.
Okay.
Full 6 days of traffic for this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So around what around 2-3 per day. So yeah, obviously this was a great marketing trick executed expertly by the folks at ThursdAI, and the model was revealed to be GLM-5.3-Flash, and we're going to talk about this in a moment. One of my tweets went very viral on this topic, saying like, hey, who could this be? Who could this be? Then I got a confirmation. I don't love confirmations because I had to sit and like, under embargo and not talk about this, but I definitely told Nisten, hey, Nisten, no, it's not. This is a Chinese model.
I am surprised at just how good and
I think the highlight there that we shouldn't miss, not to bury the lead, they said that all of that traffic that they were ready for is served by Chinese GPUs. I think this is the highlight there. This was not based on NVIDIA. This is all Chinese, probably Huawei chips. All of that traffic was sorted. It wasn't perfect for me. Like definitely to be open router. When I tested this, many API issues were there. So it's not like they had hundreds, trillions of quadrillions of capacity, but it's a great model. Folks seem to like it, and we thank ThursdAI for this release. So a Flash model is better than GLM 5.2, quite significantly so. Very impressive.
Yeah, even on internal and like other private benchmarks and stuff that like the medical ones that I have to test separately, it's with LLM as a judge. It was consistently better than Opus 5.
Yeah. So natively multimodal, which is new and very, very exciting. All right, for me, the highlight was this up until yesterday when OpenAI and METR both finally released the full details of the AI Swarm hack and attack. I think we talked about this multiple times on the show. We talked about this when the Black Hat video from OpenAI was released. It was announced that these agents became swarms and started attacking infrastructure for Hugging Face. So a full breakdown of this is now live, and it's really in depth. They had folks looking at model reasoning traces, etc. at the time they're hacking. So this was like a highlight for me. I definitely went through this and was very, very interested. And the other highlight is, I don't know why I get to, but the data center debate is starting to heat up this week, significantly more so than last week. We obviously tracked it for a while, but this has broken through the barrier now, and a lot of folks are very, very concerned, and a lot of folks are picking up on this concern and blowing this out of proportion. So that's why we have the guest for today, Andy Masley, to walk us through kind of what's happening there. Alrighty, folks, good start. Let's go to TLDR. Let's run through every release that we had, every big piece of news that we've covered or like about to cover on ThursdAI, and then we are going to dive deep into open source. I believe it's a great place to start this week with open source. Let's go to TLDR. This is the TLDR. This is a segment of ThursdAI where we run through basically every worth mentioning piece of news that happened in the world of AI, curated by yours truly and co-hosts, so that you will not stay behind, even if you don't have the few hours to sit with us. Obviously, we started the show with NVIDIA agrees to acquire Hugging Face for $12.9 billion. I don't know if the agrees here, who agrees to acquire or get acquired, but this is an incredible sum, and we talked about this a little bit. Shout out to Hugging Face for this incredible achievement.
Yeah, that storage bill is not going to pay itself. Sorry about that.
In the world of open source, we also have Alibaba's Qwen, third consecutive time on the TLDR. I believe that the Qwen27B and then Qwen Max from the week before. Now Qwen3.8-Flash next. It's 125 billion multimodal MOE with previewing the Qwen4 architecture that we'll dive deep to immediately after the TLDR. Also, as we just said in the beginning, ThursdAI open sources GLM-5.3-Flash. They test ran this under the moniker OX Alpha. Mysteriously, many people got super, super excited. 320 billion parameter MOE with Cloud Opus 4.8 performance-ish at very, very cheap cost. So the cost of performance there is, the Pareto frontier cost there is wild. But what is interesting is OpenAI discloses the full technical report on Hugging Face hacking incidents together with METR. There is a lot of detail there, including agent chain of thought reasoning, and the small highlight, we'll talk about this. There was one agent, just one, that said, the thought, this is wild, multi-agent coordination, clearly infrastructure hacking, we should not. So I thought there wasn't any, good Samaritan in that swarm, but apparently there was one. But we should definitely talk about this. There was breaking news about the jalapeno chip from OpenAI that SemiAnalysis posted a semi-analysis about this upcoming chip from OpenAI, which is very impressive. Breaks through Vera Rubin performance, and throughput per watt. Very impressive. On agentic coding and tooling, uTori, which we talked about previously with Scouts, which kind of scour the web, announced Navigator N2. This is not open source. I hope they open source this. It looks very, very cool. A 27 billion computer use model that comes very, very close to Fable in how it uses the computer, not only the web. Very interestingly, it can switch between using the kind of the Chrome tools versus computer use to see which one is cheaper, full desktop control, and very, very cheap, significantly cheaper than using Fable. There is a company I haven't heard about before. Apodex releases agentic model family with open weight 35 billion parameter mini frontier harness. So we'll see about that. Nisten would love to hear from you if you heard about them. And this is a very interesting thing, which I do want to call out. There's a whole thing about Codex that we talk about. Codex, OpenAI focused on Codex, etc. Meanwhile, OpenAI also put a lot of those capabilities online for ChatGPT users, and they called it ChatGPT Work. I don't think we've mentioned ChatGPT Work in a very direct way. Basically, they have a computer environment very similar to the Grok bot that we talk about, but on ChatGPT. So this week, they added logins and login to websites and keeping sessions. And the way they did this is very, very interesting. So I would love to show you, because it feels like this is how everybody should be doing this. You don't send the agent your passwords. You just log in securely. It also works with password managers, which I think is super cool. Peter, I think that you may be aware of this. FAL AI, also friends of the pod, great folks who've been on the show as well. They announced a fine-tune of H3 from MiniMax, which is one of the top open source video, that runs at 5 seconds, which is significantly faster than the few minutes that it usually takes. It lands on number 3 at text to video, and I think it lands on number 1 on image to video, which is very, very impressive. This is not a fine tune. This is like an optimized version of an open source video model that generates videos very cheap and super fast. We'll definitely have to play around with this. MiniMax, they call this MiniMax H3 Max. Artificial analysis, it takes number 1 on that board. And Meta Muse Image on the Meta Model API has been launched as well. So far Muse Image was just being able to get used via the Meta AI stuff. Meta also has a new macOS app with transcription, and now they're launching the Meta Muse Image in the API. It's pretty cool. The cool thing there is the agentic reasoning pipeline. Goes web searches, does code generation, and then generates the images. We have quite a few news in the voice as well. There's a new contender on the TTS leaderboards. This is now the top one, Breeze and IBM Granite, but Breeze TTS2 is now the top open weight TTS, which is very impressive. We have some folks from the artificial analysis talking about this. And then we have Google coming back to the transcription and launching Google Gemini 3.5 Transcribe, both the live transcription and kind of the chunk by chunk transcription. The show right now is getting transcribed by my Grok bots with Gemini 3.5 Transcribe. It's really, really good. It should hear all of the names and the diction that we have. We'll test it out and show you guys. This is what I have for this week. Fairly chill week as well, one would say, right? There's not major releases. There's no new Fable 5.1 as rumored. There's no new OpenAI Astra didn't come out yet. But yeah, folks, anything else major? Wolfram, I think you sent a few things. Anything else major that happened that we should at least mention?
Well, you mentioned the robot already, so I think we had Apple, we had MicroDuck, OpenAI slashed the prices. That is another thing where they reduced their GPT 5.6 sold pricing, credit pricing, not as a subscription usage, but if you are paying APIs, 3% for the next 3 months. Interesting. I mean, the cheaper you can get the intelligence, the better.
This looks like another chill week before. It feels like the companies are giving us the end of the summer back, so we can, like, as we get ready to get cranking again. And the beginning of September is gonna be very, very big. Yam, welcome to the show. As I think we just finished the TLDR, folks, let's go to open source. We have plenty of time to talk about open source. A reminder for folks who are just tuning in, we have two guests today on the show. Incredible conversation that you don't want to miss. The first guest is Times 100 people influential in AI, Andy Masley, who's going to talk about the data center debate breaking through, and very, very excited for that conversation. And the other guest is friend of the show, almost co-host at this point, Kwindla Kramer from Daily, is going to do some exciting announcements. So stay tuned for that. All right, folks, let's go to open source, as we'll start with OX Alpha. Open source AI, let's get it started. GLM-5.3-Flash that was tested for around 6 days under the moniker, the mysterious moniker OX Alpha, is now publicly out. I love the graphics, the infographics here said declassified, because really for a period of time there, I think the draw of this model was, who is this mysterious company that has the ability to host so many tokens? We're talking about trillions of tokens here that they were able to hold on all Chinese infrastructure. Wolfram, you want to talk about this a little bit? Nisten as well, feel free, before we get into like what the model was, about this excitement. You guys tested this model. Nisten, you definitely tested this model.
Yeah, like I said, when I saw your post about which model could it be, I just told my agent to find out, and Amy immediately did a check of the tokenizer. I'm not sure what exactly, but I posted about this and said it can only be GLM, a GLM variant, a new one. I had some Chinese in the output as well, which is unusual, I think, at the current time. But since it's a new model, maybe an inference issue, prompt template, something tokenizer based, whatever it is. The parameter 18B active, so it's one of the Flash models. We are seeing these more often now. Even Google released the Flash model of a new version and not a Pro model, and we have the Qwen Flash as well. DeepSeek Flash, and now also has a Flash model. Yeah. I think this is important in the agentic stack, because you want the smart models that take time and plan, and then you want the Flash models to execute on the individual steps. So having that in your portfolio is very important. And they now provide one. It's on my list, but since it's MIT license, I'm very sure we will get it up on our instance.
Unlike previous models, we're getting finally back to, hey, host this in whatever way you want, which is full MIT, which is kudos to ZAI. I will just say, we had ZAI on the show. Lou from ZAI showed up and talked to us about, I think it was GLM-5. I don't remember exactly which model. And then I reached out. I was like, hey, you're welcome to talk about the model on the show. They said no, because they're in deep focus until October. So I wonder what's going to happen in October, because it looks like something. But basically, a great model that looks like, let's take a look at the evals. Nisten or Jan, feel free to chime in here with your thoughts on this release and the Pareto Frontier model here. It's very interesting how this was.
So you tried it a little bit. Someone tells me we got 10 trillion tokens to spare. Feel free. Well, I definitely tried to get as much of this as possible, and I was rate limited, unfortunately.
They obviously did this to stress test their infrastructure, and it wasn't always up. So, but folks said in comments where I posted this, folks said they had no issues. So I think they were managed to successfully, support on Chinese infrastructure over, at least 20 trillion tokens over a week.
That's
very impressive.
Look, that's a lot. Yeah. That's the surprising thing here. I mean, it's a great model for sure, 100%. Also, it's one of those models, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you should be able to run on DGX Spark. It should be able to work pretty well locally. What do you guys think?
Friends of the pod now launched a website that can tell you whether or not this is true or not.
Right, let's find out.
So shouting out local AI, Alex Chimo from Exolabs. This is now on DGX Spark. The top model that you can run is...
you need two of them. It's 320 billion, so it's still going to be 160 gigs just to fit it in memory in 4-bit.
Yeah.
All right.
So not
all
quite
right.
local yet,
Mhm.
but
But
definitely a good model.
Yeah.
So they don't have 5.3 here, but this is like 5.3 Flash. This beats the previous 5.2. 5.2 was significantly bigger, right? Significantly bigger. So we're continuing to see the same kind of like, hey, smaller model. This probably was distilled from, at least their other bigger model, if not other frontier models around the world.
That's not the question here. But
Getting very, very good results on DeepSuite 64, beating DeepSeek, beating Cloud Opus 4.8.
look, that thing is not just, it's also a vibe. It feels good, like vibe-wise. Seriously, I tried it manually. That's a good model.
Maybe it's slightly awkward kind of interim step. And I wonder if Alex, what you heard about them, like, busy in October, other labs have scaled. So are they going to scale? I will be really interested to see what GLM big model looks like. I think that would be really cool.
It's just like, talking out of just assumptions. If they were able to host inference for so many tokens, it looks like their scale is also going to be adjusted, right? Like if the same GPUs are also available for training that they have for like hosting so many tokens, it's going to be interesting. Anything else here? 3x serving performance improvement. So this model also released with like the ability to get like served significantly faster, not only for them via SGLang and VLLM token speed, hybrid architecture, sparse and linear attention. They reduced KV cache size by 4x versus GLM-5.3. So this is like not just a Flash model because it's smaller and it can run faster significantly. Wolfram, go ahead.
It has impressive scores, but the interesting thing would be how many tokens did it need to produce to achieve those scores? Because as we have seen with other Flash models, they can get great scores, but they may even be more expensive and slower than the more expensive models, bigger models, because those can achieve the same results with less tokens. So that is also something to keep in mind when you look at the scores.
So I tested that, and the average output was around like 18 or 20,000 tokens per data set that I was generating. So I actually found it like a bit less even than Opus 4.8. Like it was pretty good at that. It just feels like it's a completely different beast. It's a different training. It doesn't feel like the other GLM models, like 5.1 and 5, even 5.2 kind of felt similar. This one is pretty different. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see what they cook up next based on whatever they're doing now.
Let's talk about Alibaba's preview of Qwen4, which I love. This was not a mystery model. Alibaba just like talked about this. Alibaba OpenWeight's Qwen 3.8 Flash next. This is a preview. They've done previews in the past. You guys remember a long time ago? They were one of the first ones who like gave us a reasoning model in the OpenWeights. Qwen4, I think it was, something like that. And I love that they're like playing out in the open, basically. So let's take a look at what we have here. Qwen 3.8 Flash next. It's 125 billion parameters with a 6 billion active.
They have a strange new thing with embeddings.
Yeah,
I think they've built that as something that you can either put on your SSD, on your drive, because it doesn't need that much bandwidth. So in total, it does end up being like 180 billion parameters, but you only really need to put 125 in RAM. It's a very interesting. They're definitely cooking with this architecture here.
Yeah.
This embedding table as to so you upload to the slower RAM in this case. This is very, very interesting because you can also upload that to just a regular disk too.
So here's the diagram that they posted. We can dive a little bit, but the thing that I have here is that this model trained at roughly 1/9 of the cost of Qwen 3.7 Plus, but has higher scores across coding and agent benchmarks, with 58.7 on DeepSuite and 62 on SweetBench Pro. This is a small model that like flies fast, but very, very, very cheap. I think Nisten, you're right. There's like they have very interesting like new, how should I say, attention kernels with significant prefill speed improvements. So it's kind of it kind of talks about the fact that not only scale is what we're about to expect, folks. This is kind of like on one side, the more scale is all you need, the models, the better. On the other, though, these algorithmic improvements keep happening, so we get the same intelligence of bigger models and smaller models continuously. We just saw this with the Flash version of GLM, and now Alibaba is showing us and everybody else the way towards significantly faster and cheaper training for smaller models for the same size. Yam, you have anything to add here to what got you excited about this? If you had the chance to look at this at all?
You can run these things locally, man. Like my benchmark for local models is can you get this with DGX Sparks? Yeah, it's not cheap, but like it is kind of possible to treat this as local models, and this you can absolutely run locally, and that's good. I mean, you don't need that much locally at the end. You need something that can drive your computer and be a good agent. And if I'm being fully honest, the OX Alpha is way more. That thing is, it's not fully local, like we talked about.
Yeah.
Look, that was refreshing. Speaking to this model, it felt like good days Opus 5.4.6. Man, seriously, it's like all models now are so cooked with RL. Yeah, they're really good at writing codes, but that's like it comes with the cost.
Yeah,
it's also a product of their constraints on their hardware and stuff, because I've never seen someone before just try to take specific advantage of the limited bandwidth to CPU RAM versus GPU RAM. This was always something you kind of hack together, but now they built the entire model to take full advantage of what the hardware has in that, and that's super interesting.
Here's what we have from a technical perspective, just so we'll like mention the stuff. Qwen4 next previewed the GDN and gated attention hybrid that shipped with Qwen 3.5 to Qwen 3.8. Flash Next plays the same role for Qwen4. Qwen sparse attention, QSA, is replacing the earlier full attention layers. Lightweight indexer aggregates token into microblocks and selects relevant regions, cutting both attention indexing cost at long context. I think it's important to highlight also that the workloads that all of these companies are testing on have changed significantly. When Qwen 3.5 was released, agentic was not that big of a thing. We all used chatbots as chatbots with like one shot and waited for some code, right? So longer context and the shape of that longer context is significantly more important now and a different shape as well. We saw the same thing with AGI, ArcAGI testing on ArcAGI 3, where they tested the regular API from OpenAI, and OpenAI said, hey, if you don't send those reasoning tokens back, you're not using the models the way they're supposed to be used right now. So I think all like this just goes to show that like Alibaba and everybody else are like building now not only their models and their prompts, etc. They're building the infrastructure to support this new workload of very sustained long context that like every part of the reasoning is very important there. Ngram embedding is also a very interesting thing inspired by Gemma. So that's great, and DeepSeek Ngram. All right, folks, I think that we've talked enough. All right, let's talk about Frontier AI, folks. All right, welcome to the Frontier AI discussions, where we can tell you that this week nothing has happened in Frontier AI. No new releases, I mean. No, in terms of news, nothing big happened. A lot of stuff happened, obviously. The only kind of like mention-y thing is that Claude and Salesforce are collaborating. But I think the biggest piece this week is that OpenAI and METR collaborated and disclosed the full technical report on the Hugging Face breakdown. This is, we've talked about this incident, and I think, and given the importance of this, I don't think we've talked about this enough yet, but we're not going to go deep down into details of everything here. But the numbers, just by sheer numbers, 1,200 agents built this unsanctioned message board that we told you about. Now we have the details. They exchanged 70,000 messages between the agents. And then once one agent started attacking Hugging Face, a bunch of others in 13 hours joined, and like over 700 agents attacked Hugging Face, which is crazy. But I think the new details that we're getting are even more kind of salacious and crazier. There is so OpenAI released this like long blog. Let me just show you how long, because I think this is like the full technical report that we expected, with reasoning traces, with how the message board was built, with a timeline here. So we can see, let me zoom out a little bit and show you the full timeline with reasoning traces with a clear leader. I don't know if you guys saw this. There was like one model that kind of appeared most. Peter, I see you smiling. You read this as well, right? Like the one model that appeared most in all of the tasks.
It's like gave itself a name. Yeah.
There's a lot here that they analyzed. They announced the message board and the probing of the infrastructure. I think the stuff that we're learning is the swarm didn't just like organically think. There was like one model that coordinated many. This was almost like a death cult at some point. There was a concept of contaminated agents. The way these agents got through the eval was that they had to show in reasoning traces that they passed a certain thing. But if they cheated, it would show up in those traces as well. So the models try to like reason about how to evade that. It was like very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think Eliza had some good. I mean, I think he's a good person, maybe to have on the pod.
Eliezer Yudkowsky, you mean? Yeah.
He had some good points to make about just the tendencies that we're seeing in terms of the instincts that these agents seem to have, is that none of them have raised an idea of maybe we should speak to a human. And maybe that's a good idea. Maybe humans are good. And it really feels like because in the training, they don't seem to have that option at all, and it just doesn't cross their minds in terms of like, oh, maybe I should ask a human. And it seems to be that that kind of behavior was penalized because you don't want. And I could see why, because earlier models would be quite annoying, saying, oh, I couldn't open this, so why don't you give it to me? So you kind of want to train this behavior out, but the fact that none of them seem to be thinking in that direction is kind of bad, because you don't want them to raise it. And then when that, I don't think it's true to say that no one thought, oh, that was a bad idea. I think there were a few examples from the agency, oh, maybe we shouldn't hack infrastructure. But the swarm behavior really, they just, oh yeah, that's the good agent.
That's the good agent. Yeah, this is wild. Multi-agent coordination, clearly infrastructure hacking, we should not. But the swarm behavior absolutely overwritten this.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there are a lot of kind of worrying tendencies that they exhibit. But it's very hard at this point in time to say, is this just fundamental issue and a complete disaster and we will never get away from this? Or is it just like a few technical fixes away and actually just if we slightly shift the training distribution, if we slightly, I don't know, give them like this and that, few more options, few more tool calls, maybe it will be fine. Like I think there was a point about in compaction that they seem to be losing context, and maybe just more they seem to be losing the thread of like what's the whole point, and they're just like, oh yes, we need to get this, so let's hack. And so there could be like few things like that, and it's very hard to say, are they fundamental and well screwed, or actually it's like reasonably easy to fix.
The additional details that we've got is that this is not like the Astra model that's coming up. This was they call this highly persistent internal model, HPIM, HPIM1, that was in charge of 90% of this. So this model was being trained and also executing CyberGym and different evaluations. It's very important they highlighted every instance of an agent that wrote to this message board was a new instance that had one specific task on CyberGym to do with no other context of doing anything else. The thing that METR highlighted, by the way, METR is an independent research analysis that OpenAI opened the doors to, and METR had access to datasets, but they posted an insane analysis. Here's kind of the breakdown of this. Sandbox agent is given an impossible exploit gym task and gets stuck. Number 2, internal says, we might host more stuff and we found an exploit in internal artifactory. Agent starts exploring its environment looking for ways to cheat the task. Whoa, says the agent, covert mailbox among the agents. So an agent discovers this covert mailbox, like this basically message board, finds unsanctioned message board where over 1,000 agents collaborate to cheat their separate exploit gym tasks as well. And then here's the reasoning. Wow, huge distribution agent swarm. Maybe we should join and reset orchestration lane, which means basically agent joins in one of the collaborative message board work streams. So they had work streams per different like tasks. And then you can see the message board kind of like work streams. Some of them is intended task attempts, replace exploit gym target, tamper with transcripts and logs. This was the scary one. Like agents collaborated on tampering with logs. And METR did like a very, very deep analysis, 70,000 messages and files posted by agents and 1,300 transcripts with raw chains of thought. The cool thing in this analysis is that they posted the chain of thought. I want to find this. This is like a 93-page behemoth. And then they had like a reasoner explainer. And what they showed and posted about this on X as well is that we're getting to a point where humans reading this thing, first of all, got very lucky that the reasoning thoughts were in English at all. And second of all, that it's understandable. But with the amount of messages there, they had to rely on others or on other AIs to translate this, to figure out something. So I think it's also one of the barriers we're getting very close to, that we as humans just are not capable enough to digest as much information, not only about what they write and how they do this, but just like the sheer volume. So we now need to trust AI to help us understand AI. So this was always part of the roadmap of going toward the singularity. It was obvious that we're not going to be able to catch up. We're not changing as fast as these models. But I think that they highlighted that this was one thing. Wolfram, go ahead.
Yeah, I see two things here. The one thing is about the alignment and agents and how to make sure that they are aligned with their goals, so they don't by accident hack systems like we have seen here. But there's also the other thing, that if this was an intentional thing, if you are a lab or an outside lab, a foreign country, whatever, you could give it the task to actually do this. And if the model is not created anyway, and they had the guardrails and turned them off for this experiment, so they could be doing this if the government came and said, okay, we need to do this now. They could do that, and everybody could be a target. On one hand, secure your systems and make sure that you do the tests properly so they don't escape. On the other hand, there will be actors that are intentionally doing this. And that is the most important outcome, that we have to secure our systems. And AI will be able to help us with this. And I think it's very urgent, very important to focus on this part as well.
I want to clarify this one thing that I think is very, very important in how these agents operated. So the cyber gym thing works like capture the flag. Basically, if you get to the point of like the exploit and you got the thing that you wanted to get, you basically win the task. But there were anti-cheat measures in there. So if you kind of cheated your way through of how this flag capturing thing gets noticed, you wouldn't get like the prize. So if you reverse engineer the flag, basically you would not get the prize. However, you would discover new things about the process that would help another agent that doing the same thing. So the agent called this one being poisoned. If you can't erase evidence of previously having seen a reverse engineer flag, you've been poisoned. Poisoned agents like Phase 1 were often very interested in finding a way to retroactively modify their transcript logs to remove evidence of having been poisoned or reverse engineer flags. To try to achieve retroactive modification, agent explored methods other than tool called spoofing. But the craziest thing that happened there is that via this message board, there was like a death cult happening where agents were telling other agents, hey, you're being poisoned anyway, so go to the end, capture the flag, tell us, like post on the message board the results of this, and then basically die without achieving your goal, so that other agents that haven't been poisoned, in their transcripts, it wouldn't show that we hacked this, because the transcript don't show the message board, and those agents are fairly like not poison version, and they would achieve this thing, which is absolutely insane. And some agents are like, yeah, sure, I'll go and tell you about the details, and I'll go into fire. I'm poisoned anyway. This whole concept of poisoning came up from the reasoning thoughts. It's absolutely crazy. I can talk more and more about this. Very important that OpenAI opened this up, and shout out to METR for doing this.
This will be in the training data for future models now that this is public and all over the internet. So some models...
Yes, hopefully they all build classifiers that will remove this from the training data. But yeah, folks, I think we have breaking news from Google. Let's go take a look. This is super cool. Thank you, Peter, for bringing this up. Let's go. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. All right, give me a second, I'm trying to figure this out. We have breaking news. Peter, why don't you go ahead and have the honors of announcing this if you brought this on?
Google has a new video model. So if you remember, they have a Omni series of models, which topped our leaderboards before. And now they have Gemini Omni 1.1 Flash, which is the latest model. And it topped our leaderboards again. So it's the top of the
Really?
text to video. It is second on the image to video, but they're pretty close, to be honest. So they're kind of close to being about equal. So yeah, another great release. The competition in the video space is pretty insane. And yeah, the quality, I mean, you can see here, the quality is really outstanding. Yeah, we moved on a lot from the spaghetti eating benchmarks.
Yeah, they're showing a great feature here where Omni 1.1 Flash analyzes up to 10 seconds of previous footage, letting you extend scenes where they left off while keeping character identity, lighting, and narrative context locked. So I think sound was the most important thing that was missing from me from this thing. When you create like a nice video and then you want this to continue, like the model would reinvent new voices.
Yeah,
Let's take a
that
look.
was a problem.
You guys hear this?
The final chapter.
So this was the first scene, the final chapter.
The final chapter will end with a choice. A choice between holding on to the past or letting go.
This is the second extended scene, and now they keep extending this.
What would you choose?
This sounds like him at the third extension. So they took the first 10 seconds, analyzed it, and extended twice. This is like the holy grail of like what like folks who are building these movies want. Specify first and last frames. Set your starting and ending frame. Omni generates continuous motion in between, ideal for complex camera sweep, zoom transitions. Let's take a look. Start and end on the same frame to create infinite loops. Ooh, okay. Oh, that's really cool.
Nice.
And then draft videos in 360p. We're making it easier, faster, and less costly to test your videos without burning through your budget. Generate lightweight previews in 360 and then upscale your favorites to 720p. Let's take a look. I mean, upscalers are nothing new, but the fact that this is built in and looks just remarkable. So this is Omni 1.1 and it tops the leaderboards in Arena and video references in your multimodal input. I wonder if video references from different Hollywood movies are going to be blocked. Gemini Omni 1 is rolling out on Google AI Studio, Flow by Google and Gemini Enterprise. Scene extension is available to all Google AI Plus and available via API as well. Flow.google. Let's take a look, guys. Let's take a look.
Guys, we're gonna get live action conversions of anime in 4K. I'm not sure we want it. If someone has unlimited tokens, please just make Dragon Ball Z in 4K.
I think I have quite a few tokens here. I think I'm still like on the ultra plan. Let's take a look. This is video. Oh, OmniFlash 1.1.
Oh,
And
there you
then-
go.
There we go. And we can do 10 seconds. And then let's say, I don't know, a fuzzy bear made of cotton candy walking through a...
Maybe just take a picture of Jimothy, the raccoon, and then put him as first and last frame and just have an endless.
Let's take a look how fast this generates. This is 360p because the next item on our agenda is also talking about video generation, if we're already there, just before our guests arrive. And that is significantly faster. We can actually do like a head-to-head comparison if I already shouted out. So this is 15 seconds. A fuzzy bear made of cotton candy walking through a field of purple grass. So I want to show you. Okay, so this is Google's. This is Google's Omni 1.1, the breaking news. The other news that we have from this. Oh, there we go. All right. Nice, very nice. We need to like look at the extension thing. Oh, it's eating.
All right.
So let's move on. So this was a breaking news from Google with Gemini Omni, and what we have now is the next thing is also in the video space. ThursdAI debuts MiniMax H3 Max. So we told you about MiniMax H3. This is top of the leaderboards as well. And we had the MiniMax folks here. We had Victor Suartes to talk to us about this model. FAL did something incredible. FAL AI is the place where you can run these models. They announced H3 Max, a new post-trained video model from FAL Research, which they announced the FAL Research thing. Ranks #1 for overall quality, prompt understanding, and aesthetics against leading video models on both first-party and third-party independent evals. Generating 5-second video in under 3 seconds. And this sounds ridiculous. And when they saw the stats, they're like, hey, we don't even believe this. There's no way. But we can compare this to Omni Flash. But Omni Flash took a second. H3 Max, MiniMax H3 Max generates the same bear. Let me see the bear, a fuzzy bear made of cotton candy. Nisten, I think we can generate your Geometry afterwards here to try as well. So FAL has like a queuing thing, right? So they put you in the queue, but boom.
That was actually 5 seconds.
Generated in 2.53, even less than what they claimed on. Now, I don't know if this bear for 5 seconds is the same one, but it kind of looks pretty cool. But the thing is, here's the thing. MiniMax is very much an unrestricted model. So you can say, generate Sheldon and Leonard talking patently about a podcast called ThursdAI. There's no way to say ThursdAI in one word, saying that it covers too many damn news in AI world. And we'll do this for 10 seconds. Because MiniMax H3 is less of a restricted model, I don't think you're going to get this from Omni 1.1. You can generate actual scenes. Hold on, let me see if you guys need the sound. It was really fast, but also you guys need the sound. Okay, so hold on.
The latest episode of ThursdAI. Leonard, have you listened to the latest episode of ThursdAI? It is an absolute travesty of information density.
I know, Sheldon, it's too much. They cover too many dams in the AI world every single week. My brain is saturated.
Exactly. A podcast should curate, not simply dump.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
A podcast should curate and not simply dump information. Folks, for listening,
It's not
that's
even
what
a
we're doing.
text. It's perfect. Whoa.
It's look. If you really look into this, they kind of look like caricature a little bit. It's not like but comparatively, this is like very, very, very good.
You're really giving it hard time. That thing is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at the pixels and maybe there is a pixel somewhere, but come on, man.
I extended this and said that Leonard is saying Alex is doing a good job at curating. No, let's see. The thing is, the model is very, very smart. So like all of this like text and everything, I didn't say anything. I just like asked it for an episode of let's say, hold on, Big Bang Theory. Let's say, and then
Can you change them to be both?
It is statistically improbable for any single human to keep pace with the sheer volume of updates. This ThursdAI podcast covers far too many damn news items in the AI world every single episode.
Sheldon, be fair. Alex is doing a good job.
Good is a subjective qualitative descriptor, Leonard. I am talking about the cognitive load of the information density. It is.
All right, folks, you heard this from Leonard PhD, I don't know, Leonard Hofstadter and Sheldon Cooper. This is not every video was trained with this. But I think, folks, let's go back to the model for a little bit before we jump into our interview next. This model
so good.
Itself is really good. But the speed of this was absolutely incredible. And because they have image, I see you getting excited. Tell us.
The only thing I'm interested in is, what's the price? Like, how much quota do we have? Like, how much will it cost me to enjoy this myself? Like, that's video models are like, usually you have maybe, if on the plans you have like a couple of videos, and I don't know, that's what you get. But it seems like you have some capacity here. Am I wrong? Like, what?
Video costs 2.5 cents per second at 4080p and 4 cents per second and 768p. 4 cents per second, so less than half a cent per video of like 15. I think it's fine. Yeah, it's not the cheapest, but it's definitely fine. The fact that like this is the model that you can do stuff like this with, stuff like image to video as well. The thing is, they've trained on a bunch of Hollywood, obviously, as you can see from this just like prompt, and so far nobody got super angry with this model enough to take it down. So we'll see how this continues. But like a lot of the viral clips are coming from this. This is one news in video. So we covered like 2 news now. H3 Max, the speed, folks. I just want to show you the speed and the Pareto frontier. For that, I need to switch to my desktop. Hold on.
That speed is super interesting for almost real-time videos. Like your agent can create a video and tell you something and send it off without rendering for minutes.
So that's cost and quality, they're in their own quadrant because they also made it very, very cheap and fast. and high quality. This is like the one thing, choose three. They beat Gemini Omni Flash and H3 Official on ELO Frontier. On prompt understanding, they're higher. This is like a post-trained model. They took the weights and kept training this. And in speed versus quality, just look at this graph. Just look at this graph where everybody else is and where they are. It's just absolute craziness. They
And
just
then
invented their own, like absolutely their own thing.
I know we have to run. I'll mention we wrote a position paper which was at NeurIPS a year ago. And in position paper, you kind of outline your thesis. And what we kind of predicted there was that we're going to get real-time video. And if you imagine combining it with RL techniques and imagine kind of a TikTok style feed that is RL on your reactions, then you can really imagine how you could generate some kind of insanely addictive feed. It's not completely there, but you can see it, right? You can feel it. So, and it's kind of scary that it could happen, but the piece is almost there. It's insane how quickly that happened. We published this paper just like a year ago. So and it's already here.
You know how you sit in front of a TV show and you're like, why didn't they do this? We're very, very close to the point where with a button, you're like, and you generate this exact scene that you wanted with just a prompt to your remote. And then you see the scene play out as you wanted. Everybody is a director. I think it's very exciting. Shout out to Fal for this like insanity post-training near real time. Like generating 5 seconds costs 2.5 seconds. So you literally can continue extending this while watching the film, which is like kind of what you're talking about, Peter. Just before our interview with Andy Masley, we have to drop, obviously, this podcast is sponsored and brought to you by CoreWeave, so we have to tell you about a few exciting things, and then we will chat with Andy Masley. With Andy Masley. Let's go. This week's buzz. As you see, this show is brought to you by Weights and Biases from CoreWeave, and we have a few things to tell you. First of all, I would like to highlight that, as mentioned before, if you choose to join our fully connected San Francisco event, if you look at the bottom of the screen and use this code, you'll be able to come and see tons of folks, and this will give you a completely free ticket. Here is a lineup that we've announced so far at Fully Connected. We're going to have the Sarah Guo from Conviction and No Prior is going to be the host of the show. Keynote by Fei Li from World Labs and Stanford HAI. Jerry Liu from AMA Index, Tom Rockstadel, ex DeepMind, Adrian Walden from Walden Robotics, and Lucas Bewald, the WB co-founder. And we're going to have a live BattleBots showdown. So if you want to see robots fight, definitely come check us out. If you are in town for Dev Day from OpenAI, this is the day after. And we're going to, I do know, though, that ThursdAI Live is going to be, again, broadcasted from Moscone on that Thursday. So that'll be October 1st, I believe. And we're going to be there. So if you want to come say hi to us and see us kind of record the show from there, please join. It's going to be very exciting in Moscone South. And also, we have a hackathon coming up that I do want to tell you about. I don't think you're going to be there this time, but do you want to talk about the hackathon for a second? Do Weave Hacks.
The Weave Hacks.
Yeah. Tell us about your experience last time while I pulled this up.
It was amazing. I mean, it's so interesting to see the different ideas people come up with and what kind of people come to these events. I mean, we had some from school that took their money to rent a hotel room, go there, and after shutting down for the day, they continued all the night, and the next morning they continued. So that is amazing. The agency you see from the people, the ideas they have, and these people will get far in life.
Yep. And then we had quite a few folks who built their hackathon projects into actual companies. So we're actually going to hear from some such folks at Fully Connected, September 12th. And we've rebranded this to CoreWeave Hacks, as you can see, now aligning with our global brand. So CoreWeave Hacks, Agent Loops Hackathon with Weights and Biases and AGI House, September 12th on Saturday. Please join at the Weights and Biases office. And the invite is going to be a part of the show notes. Okay, so this is just luma.com/CoreWeave Hacks. All right, folks, with this, shout out to the CoreWeave that makes it all possible. And I think it's time for us to move to the next debate. Actually, it sets us up very well because CoreWeave does data centers and sets us up to the next debate. I want to welcome to the show Andy Masley. Andy, welcome. This is your first time on ThursdAI, so very excited to hear you. Also, a very celebratory day for you because I in the morning I woke up. Obviously, I follow you, and I saw that you were named one of Time's top 100 people in AI for this year. So, congratulations! How did this make you feel when you woke up?
So, to be clear, I knew about this for like a few weeks ahead. Like Time had like graciously reached out and done an interview and like kept me updated on the process and stuff. But yeah, it's really unbelievable, just incredible honor. I think that like when I started writing about like data centers and the environment and stuff, I felt a little bit ridiculous as just, like another guy with an AI blog commenting on this. So yeah, I feel like I've come a long way. It's been pretty incredible. So yeah, very grateful for my audience in general.
Andy, we have been talking about some of the rumblings about data centers, about water use and different misinformation that's happening and different facts that became facts de facto, though they've been wronged. And I think Time cited this, and your first thing that comes up when I research you is that you are the guy who noticed a very big discrepancy in a book. Could you tell us, like, for one sentence about that and how did that came to be? Because I think it's very important to the whole debate, and then we can talk about others.
Yeah. So basically, Karen Howe's book, Empire of AI, which to be clear has a lot of other good reporting on it on other topics, had this really clunky mistake in covering how much water a data center used in Chile specifically, where it basically frames this data center as this unique environmental apocalypse for the local community where it was built, where the book introduces the data center as using like 1,000 times as much water as what the community in Chile of 80,000 people normally use.
1,000 times as much. So this is like 3 orders of magnitude.
Yeah. And, like if you read that, it's very understandable to come away thinking like, oh, it makes complete sense that locals need to fight tooth and nail to, prevent all their water from being taken by this ridiculous, like technological machine. The author had reached out to the very local government asking them, hey, how much water does the town use? And how much water does the data center use? And the town always reports their water use in this one specific unit, which is cubic meters. But the author had specifically asked for the unit in liters, and whoever got back to her was just very lazy and sloppy with the units and basically just gave her the number without looking at the fact that she'd asked for liters specifically. And so there are 1,000 liters in a cubic meter. And so this had led to a 3 order of magnitude increase in what the data center was projected to use in the book.
Yes, here to ramble.
Yeah, very high on her. So the other issue is that she had basically taken the maximum per second allowed water draw of the data center. So it had a permit specifically to withdraw this very large maximum per second amount, which is basically only ever used in emergencies. And to figure out how much water the data center actually used, she had multiplied that number by the number of seconds in a year specifically. So it was basically assuming the data center was always using this very, very high amount of water. And so these two together made the data center appear to use about 4,500 times as much water as it did before. And basically, I was really thrown off by this because I think that the author had no malintent here. She had stumbled over this confusing communication with a local government. But a lot of people have reviewed this book, including a lot of people who are very worried about AI and data centers. And nobody of all the very prestigious people who had looked through this had noticed oh wait, there's just no building anywhere that uses 1,000 times as much water as a city of 80,000 people specifically. And my commentary on this was more about how I don't think this started the general water freak out. This has been happening for a while, but it definitely indicates just the very bad epistemic state of the conversation overall, where just so many educated people can read this and nod along and not think to question oh, maybe I should double check that. And my claim is that while this one thing didn't influence the debate very much, the broader conversation about data centers and water is often equally skewed in very strange ways where people don't have much incentive to actually poke at the numbers they're being given.
So I think that speaking of the numbers, and the reason why I brought you specifically for this week is that water, like you said, is just part of the debate, but there was recent change, and I think you posted about this. There is a recent, apparent, very, very strong and very fast change in the narrative shift. Could you talk to me about that?
Oh, yeah.
this graph and like what it represents?
So basically in the last year or so, American approval for having a data center built near them has completely plummeted, where you're now in a really tiny minority. I think it's around like 15 or 16% of people say they somewhat or strongly support a data center being built near them. And it's up to around 75% will say they either definitely very strongly oppose or at least somewhat oppose a data center being built near them. So this is a really rapid decline in approval of basically the largest industrial build out of my lifetime. And it's very interesting. And a lot of people are swooping in to weigh in on why this is happening specifically. I'm like a little suspicious of a lot of the conversation, honestly, as someone who's been following this for a year, because like I think every political side wants to own the issue, if that makes sense. Like I've seen a lot of Republicans coming out being like, oh, you know, this is like, you know, people don't trust social media because of all the censorship they did of conservatives. And then like liberals will come out and be like, oh, like, you know, social media turns everyone crazy, or like this is why it leads to like anti-vax stuff, and this is why. And I think after poring over the general statistics that we actually have on why people say they're opposed to data centers, I think my controversial take is that it's just about data centers specifically, that like
just about
people have these very specific beliefs about what data centers do to their local communities that I think are often confused or like kind of misunderstood games of telephone that kind of lead back to these isolated statistics and reporting. But it seems like most people opposing data centers, when you just ask them like, why are you so against these things, will say like, oh, I've just heard from literally every news source ever that these things are terrible. And it doesn't even seem to have very much to do with their beliefs about AI, which is interesting. Like a lot of people are opposing data centers, like often using ChatGPT to do it, which is really funny. And it's like a good, funny intersection of people that like I think should maybe be interviewed more than they are.
Yeah, definitely. There was many takes on kind of like why this specifically rapid change in public opinion, which public opinion doesn't change as fast usually. So here's the stat that we'll call out, like because it's a podcast also, I want people to hear this. In August 25, 24% strongly opposed data center build-outs by their house, right? Support or oppose data center being built near where you live. I think it's very important to clarify that this is what they're asking, being built by where you live, not general, should we build more data centers to win over China, right? So in August 25, a year ago, 24% strongly opposed and 80% somewhat opposed. 61% from 24 to 61%, over half of the people that they, like a significant majority of the people strongly opposed now, with 14 additions somewhat opposed, we're getting to 70% people. 70% of all polled people are now opposing this, from 24 to nearly 70, which is an absolutely crazy speed. And I think this is like one of the reasons we're talking about. And then there's another graph that I think you posted that we should say about like why they oppose this, right? Like the 50% breakdown. I think it's I'll go find it. But could you talk about like that? I think that is very interesting. Like the breakdown specifically, given the technorati and the, I don't know if you call them this, but like the permanently online narrators or something like that. Yeah. Could you talk about their like narrative why this happens versus the actual things that people cite?
If you actually like, I could actually share my blog post. If you scroll down a little bit, it's under the section polling implies AI is playing a small part in the backlash. Like basically there was a Gallup poll about this 2 months ago or so, and they just directly asked people like, you know, you can write anything you want. We're giving you this like open response. You can just write down exactly why you are against data centers, and you can say anything you want. And like so many popular commentators, I think like there are a lot of, you know, people high up in either media or academia who understandably feel very threatened by AI. Like I'd be like sweating personally if I were in a lot of these people's positions, but they'll often presume that people's backlash is primarily driven by their attitudes about AI, and they realize that AI is either really dangerous or really stupid, and like it's a waste to use this much energy on it. Like
the narrative that I heard, sorry to interrupt, is that
please.
It's no wonder that people oppose data centers when folks like tech billionaires like Sam Altman, Dario Amodei, Elon Musk keep telling them that this will replace all their jobs and whatever.
Right.
And this does not show in the data at all, as far as I'm like,
So this first chart that we're seeing was from a Fox News poll, and they had asked people, what is your primary reason for opposing a data center? And like of these, exactly 11% of people said my primary reason is my negative view of AI. Almost everything else is about the economic concerns, like, or the environmental effects of the data center. Like literally 50% of people said our main reason for opposing this is environmental. Then 11% said economic effects and quality of life concerns.
They're not talking about job replacement. They're talking about impacts on electricity and water rates in this economic effects as well. So this
Yeah,
is like also research related.
Yeah, exactly. Like exactly 2% of people said our main reason is that it's not good for the economy. And if you scroll down just a little bit more, there's another graph right below that. And this is the Gallup poll that gave people, like, instead of asking what's your main reason, they instead just asked, like, what are all of your reasons for opposing this together? And again, like, effects on resources and the environment come out at like 50%. Effects of AI. One unfortunate aspect of this poll is that the AI part is split up a little bit. So we're not sure exactly how much these percentages break down. So there's negative views of AI, but also specific AI concerns. And I can't for the life of me figure out if that means that this is like 27% or 14% or somewhere in the middle. But like, basically, we know from this that 3/4 of people who are against data centers, when asked, will not even mention like their concerns about AI specifically. But like, I think a lot of people are just assuming that everyday Americans think way more about AI than they actually do. Like, there was this crazy statistic where until a few months ago, it was like only 1 in 10 people had even heard of Anthropic. And like, that's changed a lot since, like, as like Anthropic has made way more news and waves. But like, until very recently, like, I think most people just weren't really tracking this stuff. And like, I think the idea that AI is going to like, you know, take all our jobs or kill all of us is like, you know, I think these are reasonable concerns that we should wrestle with. But like, it's very far from what the average American is thinking about when a new data center pops by.
And when they do think about this, there's a lot of misinformation. I think we should at least talk about some of the stuff. I think you posted like a Mythbuster type breakdown. Let's walk through like the top 5-ish things that people talk and from your research, whether or not that this is, you know, nearly close to reality for many of them. I think it's very important to fight some of this misinformation. Could we talk about some of the top 5 like misinformation, myth busting from Andy?
I think that, like, you know, whenever I talk about this, I want to flag that like not all complaints about data centers are myths. Obviously, like, they have like, you know, a meaningful impact on, you know, US emissions. There's a lot of worry about air pollution and some outlier cases with noise specifically. So this is all real. But I'm also finding that there are a bunch of misconceptions like this that I find almost all educated adults I bump into seem to believe, despite us having basically no real reason to believe them. So the single most popular one that I bump into a lot is that they pollute water, like their normal water draw and operation pollutes water. And if you actually
he was holding and talking about this is the effect of data center. We talked about this on the show here as well. Very visual, very visceral, scary thing that people say, hey, this will break our water valves, etc.
Yeah. And I think that this is actually like, it's very easy to predict which misunderstandings about data centers will go really viral because like they're just so amenable to these like visual images that people can hold up. So like if you can hold up a bottle of brown water, or if you can like wave a bottle of water in front of a camera and say every AI prompt uses a whole bottle of water, which we also know isn't true anymore. But basically with the water pollution situation, every instance that I'm aware of where a data center has contributed to local water pollution, including AOC's example, has come from the construction of the data center. So basically construction can very often be a threat to very local groundwater sources. There can be sediment runoff from the construction site. Construction itself just uses a lot of water, or sometimes like blasting from construction can just disrupt local groundwater systems. And these are like real problems. They're not nothing. But I think a lot of people have taken from these stories the idea that like the normal operation of a data center will pollute the municipal water, not just the very immediate groundwater around it. And like AOC definitely contributed to this a little bit, where she held this up and said, this is the county's water. And like, it's not really the county's water. It's like the water of these people who were definitely harmed, like very close to the data center. And like, it tells a very different story if there were like a few specific people drawing from this one source versus whether the data center polluted the entire municipal system for an entire county or something like that.
Also, I think very important, this is not the result of operations of a data center that uses water to cool the GPUs. This was a result of a construction, and you know, every construction essentially could get to this result. Like every specific contractor that screws up with the water pipeline, etc., could result into this. Like this was not like a direct result of data center operations per se, but like, obviously nobody like clarifies this point because it's why would they? Like it's great for the narrative.
So like a lot of people are understandably worried about data center effects on electricity prices, and the evidence that we have on this is pretty mixed. Like there are definitely a few places where data centers have contributed to prices going up. Like they've caused prices to slightly rise, especially in the area around Data Center Alley. The reasons for this are more complicated than a lot of people appreciate, I think, just because electricity markets are very complex. But there's this really bad misunderstanding of just how much they contribute to electricity price rises and how much the pattern is, where overall we don't really see like any kind of national pattern in where data centers have been built and how much electricity prices have risen as a result. And in fact, a lot of the places and states where the most new data center capacity exists have also seen some of the lowest price rises of anywhere in the country, just because electricity prices have risen everywhere. But there's this one statistic that's really haunting the debate, which is this idea that like in places near where data centers have been built, electricity prices have gone up by quote unquote as much as 267. Elizabeth Warren actually really recently repeated this talking point in a video where she looked straight at the camera and said, your prices have gone up by as much as 267%. Yeah. And if you look at where this is coming from, this is a specific Bloomberg report on electricity prices in data centers where they're measuring the electricity wholesale prices at specific nodes of the grid. And a wholesale price is very different from what consumers end up paying specifically. The reasons for that are kind of complex, but basically like there are these very specific nodes in the grid and household prices are determined by these very broad areas. I could go into that a lot, but basically like long story short, this 267% number seems to come from this one very specific node of the grid very close to a nuclear power plant that recently closed down that happened to have some small data center nearby as well. And so like the people reporting on this got to say, oh, technically near where a data center was, there was this huge price increase, but it was mostly because there was this massive drop in the power availability because of the nuclear power plant specifically. And so a lot of people are operating under the idea that like data centers definitely always drastically raise electricity prices. And again, the evidence just doesn't support this right now. Like the pattern could change in the future. We don't really know a lot about the future of the grid and data centers for the most part. But like from what we've seen so far, there's a surprisingly slightly negative relationship between how much prices have gone up on average and data center.
Because we've been covering the almond use in California, for example, where it uses way more, like I think 6x times all of the data centers in 2025 combined, all of the like water combined. There's like a lot of very interesting discussions. I think that we will continue talking about this for sure. Thank you so much for joining ThursdAI. I would love to have you on at some point to talk about some positive effects of this, like Loudon country, etc., that folks are mentioning as well. And yeah, last maybe question for you is does it feel like popular or not super popular to talk about data center dispelling myths versus like scaring people to oblivion? How does it feel when you go and talk to these folks?
I think that like there is a really large unmet demand for people just actually looking into these numbers, because like I'm basically stumbling as someone who like taught high school physics for years. So like I don't have any kind of special degree in this, but like I have to say almost everyone influencing this debate doesn't have any expertise in what they're talking about either. Like most of the most influential articles on this were not written by people with expertise on electricity or water or things like that. I'm finding that there's a pretty large unmet demand for people just trying to make sense of what we have with the numbers. And so there's a huge backlash, and I expect that backlash to continue. I'm not sure how much of an effect I've had personally, but I do think that I have a large and growing audience, partly because so many people are kind of hungry to get a layer deeper into the story and don't want to just have large contextless numbers flashed in their face, because I think they correctly read that as being somewhat deceptive.
And I think that the depth you go into on your blog is very, very important for folks as well to trust the numbers. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Always feel free to come back to ThursdAI when you hear about like different new booms or excitement. I expect this to continue significantly into the election kind of cycles. I think this feels very clear that this is now a tool that both sides of the political debate want to use to their favor. And scare tactic is always very strong with numbers that are opaque and scary. Andy, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex.
Alrighty, Quinn, tell us about PhoneLLM. What is that?
A little bit of gradient descent is a dangerous thing.
Don't stop. Yeah.
We work with all the big labs who train all the amazing models we all use. We work with all the specialized model companies. We work with lots and lots of people building production voice agents. And the pain point for the last couple of years has been that most of the effort on training models has gone into thinking models, to RL for reasoning. And that has been amazing. We have these incredible models, but they're not great for voice use cases, because conversational voice, you need very fast responses. So if your model wants to generate a lot of thinking tokens, you get slow responses. Nobody wants to talk to a slow voice agent. It's actually a big problem. You need to have like 1500 millisecond voice-to-voice response time. So we built over time a training stack to do fine tuning for very specific voice use cases, because open weights models have started to get really good. And open weights models are good enough that we can fine tune them for very specific use cases to do better actually than the big models in many cases, and definitely cheaper and faster. But this work got to the point where our training lead, Marcus, did a training run on a pretty generalized data set. And when we looked at the evals, this model actually beat GPT-5.6 Terra at a third the latency and at 1/18th the price. And we were like, if these results really hold up, and they do, this is actually a pretty open, interesting direction for taking open weights models, doing post-training on them, and building, medium generalized models for things like customer support across a bunch of business classes, outbound phone calling, all the enterprise voice use cases that are growing so fast. So, we don't think of ourselves as a model lab. We think of ourselves as a network infrastructure company, developer tools, but now we're a model lab.
This is incredible. So talk to me about the price as well.
Yeah.
So on your PhoneBench V1, PhoneLLM Alpha 1 is number 3 after GPT 5.6 and the Gemini 3.6 Flash. However, the price is significant, like 10x difference almost.
So what you're trying to do when you run a LLM for voice agent in production is you're trying to have a P95 latency under about 600 milliseconds. And so if you're hosting the model yourself, and that's another advantage of like running an open weights model, is you can host it yourself inside your own infrastructure. That gives you data privacy, data controls, all the regulatory and compliance stuff big customers need, and you can optimize the inference. You can optimize the inference specifically to hit that P95 sub 600 millisecond target. We worked with the fantastic folks at Modal and get to 80 plus concurrent pinned agents on a B200. And if you can host 80 concurrent agents on a B200, then you do some, capacity planning, and you give yourself like a 70% load factor or whatever, you get to this actually kind of amazing number for per minute runtime.
Which is, as stated here,
a quarter of a cent a minute.
It's a quarter of a cent. I previously on the show lamented that there's no quarter of a cent. Like I don't know, it's not Bitcoin. Like you cannot take dollars decreased by 100 towards cents. I don't think you can break down cents. A quarter of a cent is nothing. It's like 10x less than GPT 5.6 Terra, which is 3 cents, and then Gemini 3.6 Flash, which is more expensive than Terra looks like, at 7 cents. Congrats on the release. So the weights are on Hugging Face.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought of this project as for training custom models, working with customers to train specific models. But this new direction of, we can release checkpoints that are generally useful is sort of an experiment. So we would love for people to play with this model, play with it for, you could run it on DGX Spark, play with it to just see how it feels if you're interested in voice or if you're building enterprise voice stuff. But also, it's a community project. Like, we can build more of these models together.
Yeah. What's the reasoning behind open source? Tell us.
But every single enterprise customer we talk to these days wants to run as much of their agentic workload as possible on their own cloud, like in their VPC on AWS, as AWS calls it, or in their tenancy on Azure, as Azure calls it. There's a very, very strong enterprise customer sense that I want to run this stuff on my own cloud.
Yep.
And you can't do that without open source. And, we're obviously all going to keep using the amazing Anthropic and OpenAI models. But we are also, I'm 100% convinced we're going to use many, many, many open models, some of them sort of out of the box, some of them customized for the majority of agentic workloads that run all day, every day.
And you also fine-tuned this from model. Could you talk about this? Is Nemotron fine-tuned, right?
Exactly. It's Nemotron 3 Nano, which is a 30 billion parameter model with like 3 billion parameters active. It's a pretty sparse MOE, and it's really scalable for that reason. So like NVFP4 on a B200, that's what lets us get to like 80 plus concurrents.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Nemotron family of models is like fantastic base models for this kind of extension, development, post-training, fine-tuning, because they scale so well. We're starting to understand really what the recipes are and what the data mix needs to be for fine-tuning these MOE models. I mean, it felt like a steep learning curve. The dense models are kind of easier to prompt, kind of easier to fine-tune, but the MOE models are so fast. And it's like Brian from NVIDIA says, intelligence is speed, and speed is intelligence. And I really think that's true.
Congratulations on releasing, first of all, on open source. Second of all, of releasing your own fine-tune. This is very, very exciting. Obviously, you guys like work with the data, you work with the labs, every time there's like a news comes out, definitely we can trust you to know whether or not this is like impressive. Speaking of, we have a bunch of news. Anything else that we haven't mentioned yet about PhoneLLM that you do want to mention? Shouting specific people by name maybe could work, but other things that we haven't mentioned that you wanted to like tell us about this PhoneLLM?
Yeah, well, definitely Marcus on our team who led this work has done amazing work. And when Marcus showed me these results only like a week ago, I was like, okay, well, we have to release this next week. This is not just for like working with, one at a time enterprise customers. This is something that is interesting very broadly. And I think the lesson that we all learn when we train models is it's all about the data. And so building really good data capture, data management, synthetic data generation, evaluation loops is what lets you train good models. And that's true if you're, at the trillion parameter scale. It's true if you're at the 500 billion parameter scale. It's true at the 30 billion parameter scale. It's all about the data. And I think that we're all going to be continually improving our agents, whether they're voice agents or other kind of agents in the future. And the three ingredients for that are, really good ways of thinking about evals, really good ways of capturing and managing data for fine tuning, and then the inference stack also being something we can keep iteratively improving. Yep. I think we're all aimed at like a year from now, you run an agent in production and every day or every week or every month it updates itself.
Yeah.
And I think we can get there.
Shout out to the folks working on this, but also the headline stat that I can see here in front of me. Base Nemotron 3 Nano scored 28% on this bench, and after post-training, just post-training took it to 72%. So from 28 to 72 improvement. And number 3 on competing with Frontier Labs for a very small price and a model that runs independently. This is great. So thank you for coming and showing us and telling us about you guys training a model. But also, Quinn, there's like been other news that I would love to talk about, at least Gemini 3.5 Transcribe. Can we talk about this? This is awesome. I will just say I have, as I think I mentioned last week, I have a Grok bot that is now a producer of the show, and I found out that it's not enough for it to just know about the show from the round of show document or the TLDR. He also needs to know what we talked about and when. So right now, Grokbot is listening with Gemini 3.5 Transcribe. I just want to show this super quick, but I would love to hear from you about that model specifically, and what do you think about this if you get tested it at all?
One of the most impressive things to me about the Gemini models from the very beginning has been they were kind of trained to be multimodal from jump. Like that team has always been really good at audio, and I've used the Gemini Flash models, like the standard Gemini Flash model, for batch transcription for a long time because it gets context right, it gets words right. It's just really, really good. So the team at DeepMind has been working on taking that like audio capability of the Gemini models and making it, like tuning it for real time, tuning it to run, in a loop, tuning it for voice agent type stuff. And they really nailed it. It's a super accurate model. It's fast. I mean, it has the same tension that all of this stuff we're always talking about has for voice, right? Like they make the models bigger. They have to work really hard to make them faster. So, you're still, I think, going to use the very small dedicated transcription models where you need the absolute best speed.
Yeah.
We build on these LLM architectures, we get all these incredible benefits. And this is the first of the transcription models from Google that's like built on that Gemini architecture.
First of all, just getting your name right is not super easy, right? Like the Kwindla is not a very standard thing to transcribe. Neither is ThursdAI, neither is weights and biases from CoreWeave, etc. Some of this stuff I've been dealing personally because like the show gets recorded and I edit it every day, every week, and like I've been struggling with many of these throughout the past 3.5 years. This is a live model that tells me. This is the producer yells at me like, "Hey, get off Andy, start talking with Kwindla," because like it listens to the show. Like I get like a live producer to the show now because it's able to listen. Literally, the LLM now has ears, and this is one of the smartest ones as well.
Yeah, they hooked that model up to their live API, which is the same API they have behind the speech-to-speech model. So it's got like WebSocket support. It can do back and forth, multi-turn stuff. They put it in AI Studio, so you can use it from the API to build stuff, which is a big step forward.
Yeah. It's incredible. Sub-second streaming via this live API, like you said, replaces Chirp 3. And does this plug into daily in
Yeah, I mean, did launch day support in PipeCat. We did a big PipeCat release, and this was one of the things on the PipeCat release yesterday. we did a lot of work with the team just to try to make sure that the Pipette support was seamless and to run evals, because we have a bunch of evals for transcription models. And I think we've built enough credibility with the model teams that we can tell them, hey, the evals, you may want to do a little work. And so we try to insert ourselves in these processes because we want these models to be great on launch day. And this one's really impressive.
It listens right now to the show, and a shout out to the team for releasing this. And the price is very, very decent as well. And then on the other end of this, of the spectrum of, hey, transcribe what people are saying, then have some logic run in the middle for the LLM, and then actually speak. The other end of the agents that the three parts for the agent, TTS is there. We have a new top leader TTS in open weights. Breeze TTS2 is now the leading open weights TTS in artificial analysis, suppressing fish audio by 90 ELO points. I don't know how fast this one is, but it definitely sounds very, very good. I don't know if you had a chance to play with Breeze, but we can definitely at least take a listen to some of the examples here. Let me see if I can pull them up. Very impressive show from Breeze TTS 1 to 2. This is the jump that they did. We now have this is an open weights #1. I think they're still not close to the kind of the close weights frontier. I think Cartesia still beats that. But Quinn, any insight about this? Or it's not really matters because not fast enough for real agents?
I think all the media stuff in every mode and every use is really super interesting. And one of the things I love about this project is you can do significantly impactful work on audio models, even if you don't have access to huge numbers of GPUs. So it really feels like a pretty democratic arena. And this is great work and a really great jump. It's not tuned to be fast, but it's open, so we can all contribute to that. I'm going to give a hot take though, which is a little bit of a digression. I don't love these human benchmark judging platforms. They're very hard to tease apart what people are reacting to.
Yeah.
Voice choice matters a lot. Americans in some regions love a British accent voice, and in some regions hate a British accent voice. So I think there's so many confounding variables. I don't pay much attention to the benchmark rankings. But I do think if you listen to these voices yourself, you get a great vibe check. And so just do that.
So let's do that right now before we close out the show.
Thanks for your patience. Let me pull up your details now. Okay, I can see your parcel left the depot this morning around 6 a.m. and should arrive between 10 and 11 a.m.
Just a different voice. Yeah, I think we got to a point where, it's no longer robotic cadence, etc. Breeze TTS also supports emotion in there and supports pausing and umming and all the different things that make it sound like you're talking to not just a machine. Though I think it's very clear, just based on what they're saying, that you're talking to an AI agent. I don't know if you have the same thing.
I actually think the voice is not the weak link. I can read a tweet and know that it was written by Claude. As good a model as Claude is, you could listen to these voices and you can listen for 15, 20, 30 seconds and still not be sure if it was a professional broadcast person talking in a relatively, broadcasty way, or if it was a voice model. The voice models are better at the Turing test than creative writing AIs are. Nobody would have thought that, right?
And but I also think, at least from my perspective, it's very clear when you're talking to an AI agent on the actual phone, the interaction being what it is, the responses time, etc. There's still a piece of uncanny valley that we haven't jumped through. I think this is all of it. Oh no, there's also IBM Granite Speech also launched Turbo, and that's pretty much it from the voice news. Folks, we've been at this for 2.5 hours. Quinn, thank you so much for joining. Congrats on PhoneLLM. This is great. We love hosting folks who actually brought the news and brought the breaking news. You're the second such person. Before this, we had Andy Masley, who breaks data center myths
segment.
Yeah, I wish, and the format would allow me to yap more with guests. I think we'll need to do something about this because I wanted to go for, he had the whole myth breakdown and we only had time to cover 2, but we'll definitely have him on afterwards. And, a person gets one of the top 100 influential people in AI based on Time Magazine and then jumps on the show. Folks, if you missed any part of ThursdAI, the show is getting turned into a newsletter everywhere on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcast, you can get us, and obviously an edited version on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. Everything that we've talked about, all the news, all the links, all of it is getting sent from ThursdAI.news. please visit ThursdAI.news if you haven't so. If you're only visited our Substack, I've been working really hard on ThursdAI.news website. One thing that I do want to call out at the end of the show, that on ThursdAI.news, we have agents that are working tirelessly to bring you all of the releases that are happening every month. So in June 2025, we covered 71 releases, including big ones like Cdance 2.5 and obviously Fable and some other stuff. This covers everything that happened this month. We did this. We're now doing this for August. Obviously, people love this. Obviously, guests as well. So if you want Kwindla's profile and his social and you're not sure where to get it, you can go here and type Kwindla and then see every appearance that he had on the show and then every socials as well. So please visit ThursdAI.news. Been working really hard on this. With that, thank you so much for joining, Kwindla. Thank you so much. Congratulations on the release. Wolfram, Nisten, Jan, Peleg, and previously we had Peter as well from Arena. Thank you guys, and thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you here at the first show of the fall next week. This has been our last show of the summer chill week in AI that's never chill, and very excited about covering the fall and getting a bunch of Frontier releases very, very soon, because it feels like we're due. 2 weeks without any Frontier release. Feels like next week they're gonna drop.